Alright, so now we're ready to begin the procedure. It says label 4 clean dry test tubes 1, 2, 3, and 4. So make sure to label them at the top of the tube. So we'll label 1, 2, 3, and 4. Add a small boiling chip to each test tube. So at the instructor bench, these are the boiling chips. So we'll add 1 to each tube. Alright, so we added our boiling chip, and the next step is to weigh each of the test tubes and record the mass onto your data sheet. So we will go back to the equipment room to use the analytical scale. Alright, so it says make sure to zero the scale with the beaker on it. So we'll put our beaker on the scale and then hit tare. Alright, so the scale says 0.000, so it is tared. Alright, so now we're ready to weigh our test tubes. So this is test tube number 1. Alright, it's stable, so record the mass of test tube number 1. This is test tube number 2. Alright, it's stable, so record the mass of test tube number 2. And this is test tube number 3. Right, it's stable, so record the mass of test tube number 3. And this is test tube number 4. Alright, it's stable, so record the mass of test tube number 4. Alright, now it says add a small amount of sodium hydrogen carbonate to test tubes 1 and 2. There should be enough sodium hydrogen carbonate to fill the curved bottom of the tube. So this is the sodium bicarbonate, and we will add just enough to fill the bottom of test tubes 1 and 2. I'll add a little bit more. And then it says to add a small amount of sodium carbonate to test tubes 3 and 4. So here's the sodium carbonate. We'll grab a different scoop and we'll do the same thing, but for tubes 3 and 4. Alright, so now it says to reweigh the tubes with the solids and then record your masses on the data sheet. Alright, so we're going to reweigh tube number 1. Alright, it's stable, so record your mass of tube number 1. Alright, this is tube number 2. So it's stable, and record the mass of tube number 2. Alright, this is tube number 3. Alright, it's stable, so record the mass of tube number 3. And this is tube number 4. Alright, so record the mass of tube number 4. Alright, so now we'll go back to our student bench. Alright, so now it says carefully add hydrochloric acid dropwise to the test tubes to dissolve the salts. One of the keys to this experiment is not adding any more hydrochloric acid than is needed. If a drop becomes stuck on the side of the test tube, tap the tube until it falls to the bottom, and then allow a drop to finish reacting before you add the next one. So the solution will be totally clear when the reaction is complete, and no more bubbles will be observed upon addition of hydrochloric acid. Alright, so before we use the hydrochloric acid, I just wanted to go over some safety stuff. So when you grab your dropper, carry it from the top, not from this, so that you don't accidentally squeeze it and it shoots out onto another student. And then also I wanted to point out that it's 3.0 molar, which is actually pretty concentrated, so you would not want to get this on your skin. But if you did, you would just rinse it off with soap and water. And then you'll want to be wearing goggles and gloves when handling the hydrochloric acid.